no escape. In 2009's Friday the 13th, a classic group of young adults ends up near Crystal Lake while Clay Miller desperately searches for his missing sister. In the middle of all that, Trent Sutton shows up, the kind of guy you take one look at and instantly know, yeah, this won't end well. Rich, arrogant, and with zero empathy for anyone around him, especially Clay, who's just trying to help. Trent isn't just annoying, he's the type of character who makes selfish decisions non-stop, and it keeps building. Every scene with him reinforces one thing: nobody there would miss him. When chaos breaks out and Jason starts killing, Trent does exactly what you'd expect. He runs. He escapes the cabin, sprints through the woods, and makes it all the way to the road. And then comes the cruel part. A truck appears, he waves it down, the driver stops, and for one brief moment, it looks like he made it. But no. Jason appears behind him out of nowhere. The attack is immediate, with no chance to react. Trent gets caught in the middle of his escape attempt, and it ends right there before he can even get in the truck. And to top it off, his body gets thrown into the truck, bed full of metal scraps, while the vehicle keeps driving like nothing happened. The crazy fan. Some characters seem friendly at first, but not long after, you're already rooting for them to die. Annie Wilkes fits easily into that second group. In Misery, the story follows Paul Sheldon, a writer who gets into a car accident and wakes up in Annie's house, a fan who seems kind for about 5 minutes. It quickly becomes clear she didn't save him out of kindness. Annie is obsessed with Paul's books and simply refuses to accept the direction he took the story, so she decides he's going to rewrite everything right there under constant supervision. The whole film becomes an intense psychological game. Paul is injured, isolated, and trapped. Annie shifts between caring and threatening in a deeply unsettling way, building tension nonstop. And the more time passes, the clearer it becomes that she's not just an over-the-top fan, she's genuinely dangerous. The turning point comes when Paul finally fights back. He uses the typewriter itself to attack Annie. Then he makes sure she stays down. Annie falls, hits her head, and that's where it ends. Kathy Bates's performance was so iconic that it became a benchmark for psychological horror. And to this day, Annie is remembered as one of the genre's most disturbing characters, settling the score. In it, Chapter 2, the Losers Club returns to Derry as adults to face Pennywise once and for all. But in the middle of that return, Henry Bowers shows up again, the same bully who tormented them as kids, now even more unstable after years in an institution. And worse, he's still stuck in the past, with the same obsessive hatred for the group. His final moment happens in the library. Mike becomes his direct target, and things spiral out of control fast. Henry isn't there to threaten, he's there to finish what he started years ago. And for a few seconds, it looks like he might succeed. But Richie doesn't freeze this time. He reacts, grabs a heavy object, and attacks Henry from behind, ending it right there. As a child, Richie was one of Henry's main targets. Now as an adult, he finally turns the tables for good. The Captain. In Day of the Dead, things start tense from the beginning. Survivors are trapped in an underground base while the outside world has already collapsed, but the internal chaos is even worse. Captain Rhodes leads the military with an iron fist, constantly yelling, threatening people, and treating everyone like they're disposable. He doesn't want solutions, he wants control. Meanwhile, the scientists are trying something different, studying the zombies, including one named Bub, who begins showing strangely human behavior. Rhodes thinks that's ridiculous. To him, a zombie is just something to kill, period. When the base finally collapses and the dead invade, the leader act falls apart fast. Rhodes abandons his own men and tries to escape alone, but on the way he comes face to face with Bub. Bub grabs a gun and shoots Rhodes, injuring him and ruining any chance of an easy escape. Desperate, Rhodes opens a random door, hoping for safety, and finds a horde waiting on the other side. That's the end of the line. Final blink. In Anaconda, we follow a film crew traveling through the Amazon rainforest to shoot a project, but everything changes when they cross paths with Paul Cerrone. He introduces himself as a guide, someone experienced, but it doesn't take long for him to show who he really is. Manipulative, selfish, and completely obsessed with capturing the giant anaconda, he starts putting everyone in danger without thinking twice. Cerrone takes control of the situation through intimidation. He lies, threatens, and uses everyone around him as tools for his plan. While the group is trying to survive, he's focused on profit and fame, and that wears everyone down. No ambiguity to the character, you quickly realize he's the real problem, even more than the snake in many scenes. But then the tables turn. The anaconda gets him. First, it wraps around him and immobilizes him completely. Then he disappears inside the creature, but the movie goes even further. Later, when the snake is hit, it regurgitates Cerrone, and this is where the scene becomes legendary. He reappears alive for a few seconds, completely wrecked, looks at the protagonist, and blinks. That's it. Then he finally collapses for good. That moment mixes horror with almost absurd comedy, but somehow it works. Jon Voight's performance helped turn the character into one of the most memorable villains of the 90s. The final dive. In the Deep House, we meet Ben and Tina, a couple of YouTubers traveling through Europe exploring abandoned and supposedly haunted places. The idea is simple: go in, film, scare the audience, get views, but right away it's clear they're not on the same page. Tina enjoys the experience, but she has limits. Ben does not. He's completely obsessed with numbers, likes, views, channel growth. Everything becomes content. And when they arrive at a lake in France and discover the main location is packed with tourists, Tina is ready to move on. But Ben isn't. He needs something exclusive. That's when Pierre, a local resident, offers an alternative: a hidden mansion at the bottom of the lake, far away from everyone else. Even with all the strange signs, Ben insists on diving. The house is far too intact, filled with disturbing objects, markings on the walls, masks. Nothing about it feels normal. Tina notices immediately and wants to leave, but Ben keeps pushing deeper, exploring room after room like he's on a casual tour. They find a room full of chained corpses and clear signs of rituals. They try to leave, but the entrance has disappeared. The house becomes a prison. By the time they realize they need to escape, they're already trapped. Ben ends up possessed by Sarah, part of the Montagnac family responsible for sacrifices in the past. From that point on, he changes completely. He tries convincing Tina to stay, as if what's happening is inevitable. In the final confrontation, Tina fights back and manages to wound him, bringing Ben back briefly, but it doesn't last. Before they can escape, the entity takes over again, and that's the end for him. Crazy family. In Ready or Not, a luxurious wedding turns into a deadly game. Grace marries Alex and joins the Ledoma family, a wealthy dynasty with a very unusual tradition. On her wedding night, she's forced to participate in a ritual, draw a card, and play whatever game it says. The problem is when the card reads hide and seek. In this version of the game, she becomes the target. From there, the movie turns into a hunt.
Ready or not, here I come.
The entire family, elegant, polite on the surface, starts chasing Grace through the mansion with antique weapons and a bizarre level of fanaticism. All because they believe they need to sacrifice her before dawn to maintain a pact with an entity named Mr. LaBelle. If they fail, they all die. And the most interesting part is that until the very end, there's always that question: is this real or just a collective excuse for their insanity? Grace survives the entire night, even while injured, exhausted, and completely alone. Time passes, the sun starts to rise, and nothing happens. The family is relieved, thinking it was all just nonsense. But then, one by one, they start exploding out of nowhere. No warning, no chance to react. That confidence disappears instantly. Panic hits, but it's too late. The curse was real, and the price is brutal. The scene delivers everything at once: justice, shock, and even absurd humor. This elite family that thought they were untouchable ends up having absolutely no control in the end. And Grace, the one hunted the entire movie, walks away alive in the middle of the chaos. Broken fanaticism. In The Mist, a group of people gets trapped inside a supermarket while a mysterious fog covers the town and hides dangerous creatures. At first, the fear comes from outside, but it doesn't take long for something even worse to emerge inside. Mrs. Carmody. She starts off as just another customer, until she takes on the role of a divine voice in the middle of the chaos. Using religion and fear, she begins manipulating the people around her, creating a kind of improvised cult. And it works. Ordinary people start believing everything happening is punishment from above, and that sacrifices are necessary to survive. The problem is how fast it escalates. Carmody stops being just someone shouting opinions and becomes a real threat. She points fingers, demands obedience, and at the most critical moment, convinces part of the group that David's son needs to be sacrificed. That's when the situation hits its breaking point. When David tries to leave with a small group, Carmody blocks the way. The crowd is already on her side, ready to act, and for a few seconds it looks like no one will step in, until Ollie, one of the quietest characters up to that point, takes action. He pulls out a gun and shoots her. The effect is immediate and the crowd disperses instantly. Carmody represents a very real kind of horror. Not the monsters outside, but what people become when panic takes over, and seeing that end brings enormous relief. Sweet revenge. In Trick or Treat, one of the most memorable stories revolves around Principal Wilkins, who on the outside seems like a normal guy, but underneath is a cold-blooded killer. Right at the beginning, he does something horrible to a student named Charlie, who stole candy. He pretends to be teaching the boy about Halloween traditions, keeps a calm tone, and offers him chocolate as a reward. But the candy is poisoned. Charlie gets sick right there and dies while Wilkins watches with disturbing calm, and that's only the beginning. Later, he's seen trying to bury the body in his backyard, and it's strongly implied that this was far from his first victim. In other words, he's done this this before, many times. The story moves forward, and later Wilkins appears again in another segment. This time he encounters Lori, a young woman dressed as Little Red Riding Hood, seemingly vulnerable and separated from her friends. Wilkins sees another opportunity. He begins stalking her, acting like a predator, convinced he's completely in control, but he picked the wrong victim. When he finally corners Lori, the reveal flips everything upside down. She and her friends aren't victims, they're werewolves. There's no escape. Wilkins is taken down right there with no chance to repeat the pattern that had always worked for him. The real monster. In Possum, everything revolves around Philip, an isolated and clearly disturbed man who returns to the town where he grew up. From the start, the film creates a strange, almost suffocating atmosphere. He carries around a grotesque spider-like puppet called Possum, and repeatedly tries to get rid of it, but never truly can. It always seems to come back, as if it's attached to him. At the same time, the town is dealing with the disappearance of a child, and Philip becomes the main suspect. That makes everything even more uncomfortable, because the film constantly plays with the question of what is real and what exists only in his mind. But as the story progresses, it becomes clear the true problem has a name: Maurice, Philip's uncle who raised him after his parents died, and raised is putting it lightly. Maurice is manipulative, invasive, and carries a deeply disturbing history of abuse, something the film reveals subtly but clearly enough to understand its impact. One disturbing detail is that during childhood, Philip didn't even know exactly who was hurting him. Maurice wore a mask, turning the trauma into something even more confusing and psychological. That explains much of the Possum puppet's presence, which acts almost like a reflection of that constant fear. In the final confrontation, Maurice tries repeating the pattern. He approaches, tries to regain control, but this time it doesn't work. Philip fights back, confronts him directly, and ends it there. The scene isn't grand or stylized, it's raw and uncomfortable, exactly like the rest of the film. Director Matthew Holness created the film with heavy influence from nightmares and fragmented memories, which explains the surreal atmosphere mixing psychological trauma with almost symbolic imagery throughout. Twisted Faith. In the classic 1976 film Carrie, we follow the life of Carrie White, a shy and isolated teenage girl raised under the extreme control of her mother, Margaret. From the beginning, it's clear the problem isn't just the bully school, but also the environment at home. Margaret uses religion as a tool of control, treating everything as sinful and punishing Carrie for completely normal things. That constant abuse shapes who Carrie becomes. She lives in fear without understanding her own place in the world. At the same time, she begins developing telekinetic powers, which only adds to the strange atmosphere surrounding her. And when the prom disaster happens, Carrie comes home emotionally shattered. That's when the story reaches its final confrontation. Margaret believes everything is the work of evil and decides to save her daughter the only way she understands how. She approaches Carrie while Carrie is seeking comfort and forgiveness, and in a moment of apparent calm, attacks her with a knife. But this time, Carrie doesn't react like before. Wounded, she uses her powers to defend herself. Kitchen objects begin flying, and the situation escalates quickly. Carrie launches multiple knives at her, pinning her mother's body upright. The image is powerful and symbolic. Margaret is left standing in a pose resembling crucifixion, directly tied to the religious obsession that defined her entire life. The scene closes a cycle. Throughout the whole film, Margaret was the greatest source of fear in her daughter's life, and here Carrie fights back for the first time. The girlfriend. In Get Out, the story follows Chris, a young photographer going to meet his girlfriend Rose Armitage's family. At first, everything feels uncomfortable, but still normal for a weird family visit. Rose, in fact, presents herself as the most trustworthy person there, always defending Chris and trying to smooth over the bizarre situations with her family. I trusted her, you trusted her, and we regretted it. That innocent image falls apart when the truth comes out. She was never a victim of anything. She was always part of it. Rose not only knew what was happening, she was a key part of the entire operation. She was the one luring in the victims, gaining their trust, building connections, and then handing them over. In the final confrontation, Chris manages to escape the house and tries to leave, but Rose appears armed, ready to stop him. She drops every last trace of her sweet girl act. There's no more nice girlfriend, just someone trying to finish the plan. But the situation flips when Walter, one of the house staff, regains a moment of awareness. He grabs the gun, shoots Rose, and then Chris approaches, and for a moment it looks like he's going to finish her himself, but he stops and a police car arrives. It seems like the end until his friend Rod steps out, having known all along something was wrong. Meanwhile, Rose is left there to die. And did you know there's actually an alternate ending for this movie? We talk about it in the video on screen right now. Deleted horror movie endings more disturbing than the original. Click and watch. See you there.